في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه يسبح له فيها بالغدو والآصال.
Then that becomes your only focus in life. That's what you just are. You go down a path that's very difficult to get out of. Why? Because you're just chasing. And the dunya will lead you away. It will just keep leading you away. So this is what the Prophet said. Now, moving on to the last two. What was the third one? Wealth, before you become poor. The last two I'll just put together, and then we'll end inshallah. He says, take advantage of your free time before you become busy, and take advantage, and then he summarizes it all. And this is the crux of the matter. Take advantage of your life before your death. Take advantage of your life before your death. That's the summary really. When it all comes down to it, take advantage of your life before your death. Don't waste this life, this chance that Allah's given you. Allah's given you one chance. And you live on this earth. Some of us will live 5 years, 10 years, some will live 30 years, 50 years, 80 years. Nobody is living 150 years. In 100 years' time, none of us are going to be here. That's the reality. So we have time now. The Prophet ﷺ, like I said in the narration, one of the two blessings that the majority of us waste is what? Is time. Allah gives you time. What do we do today? How many of us will waste hours upon hours with what? With the phone. Yes, with the phone. We're on the phone, and in TikTok, people now, the next generation just an hour passes by, 2 hours pass by. The brother said to me, he said, Sheikh, this young brother came to our youth camp. He said, I think I've got an addiction. So I'm thinking he's going to tell me he's addicted to alcohol or drugs or something like that. He said, I'm addicted to my phone. He said, I spent 4 hours last night on TikTok. Straight 4 hours. Just going through video after video after video after video. One by one. I mean, and you know the reality is that it's not just the youth that are addicted to their phones. How many adults are now addicted to their phones? How many of us are sitting with our children at dinner time and we're on our phones? Yes? We want our children to, have a good relationship with us, but we're not even present. Why? Because we've been consumed by our phones now. Instagram, TikTok, drama, Netflix, this, that. And hours are just wasted. Prophet is saying, what? Make use of your time. You've got time on your hands, do something with it. Use it for khair. Learning a skill, learning a trade, learning this deen, going to a class. Use your time. Yes, don't waste it. What did Tahsin Khan say when he was sitting on his deathbed before he passed away? I wish I used my time. And his advice is what? Use your time. Because it'll go very quickly. I know the youngsters now are thinking time, you've got plenty of time. I'm telling you now, yes, I'm almost 40. If you ask me where the last 20 years gone, I have no idea. The last 20 years have gone like that. At the blink of an eye. We used to have an uncle in our masjid, rahimahullah, Uncle Afzal Jordan, rahimahullah, what a guy. I remember he was like 78 at the time. And he came to me with like some papers, Arabic papers, and had some questions on there, this and that. So I said, Uncle, what's this? He said, I enrolled on an Arabic program at university, 78 years old. I said, Allahu Akbar. I said, why do you do that? He said, I'm an old man now. If I don't keep myself busy, I'm going to lose my mind. The point being is, and then he said to me, and we always talk, and he said to me, I'm 78 years old, 77, 78, and my life has gone past just like this, so quickly. And I've seen so many things. He was in Kenya and different countries, and he said it passed by very quickly. That's the nature of the dunya. It will pass you by very quickly, my dear brothers and sisters. So the Prophet is saying, what? Use your time. Be proactive. There's a famous book that I'm sure many of you heard of, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. What's the first habit he mentions? Does anyone know?
Wake up early in the morning.
So he says the first habit of the 7 habits of highly effective people is number 1, to be proactive. Yes, those who are highly effective, they are proactive people. They don't sit around and wait for things to happen. They're not just sitting around and waste time. They are proactive. Yes, that's the first habit he mentions. And our deen is a deen of what? Being proactive. Yeah, it's not just sitting around and waiting for things to happen. No. And we all have to, and that was the way of the Prophet ﷺ. Now the reality is, look, every single one of us will have certain skills. We will have certain abilities that Allah has given us. Use what Allah has given you for khair. You know, there's a man in America, his name is Dr. Hussein Sattar from Chicago. Dr. Hussein Sattar from Chicago, he's a medical doctor, and he created a video series, a textbook and video series on pathology. Pathoma, I think it was something like that it was called. And since 2011, that series has had more than 6 million hours of video lessons have been viewed. That was, when I looked at this a couple of years ago, it's probably much more than that now. And you know what I found really interesting? Is that this brother had a certain skill set, he had a certain experience and ability, and he did something with it. Now he created something in that field that will benefit people. You know, that's leaving behind a legacy. You know, when it's all said and done, what legacy are we leaving behind? You know, what is it that, what's our contribution going to be? What are people going to remember you and I for? You know, when our death comes and, you know, the angel of death comes and we're taken away, what is it that we're going to be remembered for? You know, what was our contribution? So, and it doesn't have to be, like I said, not everybody's going to be, a sheikh or a scholar. And the reality is that, look, the sheikhs and the scholars that we look up to sometimes, and we know from the hadith that they are going to be the first ones thrown into the fire. Because why? They weren't sincere. So you could be, in whatever field you're in, but you contribute something, you do something, you leave something behind. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, when he ends the hadith, he says, well, take advantage of your life before your death. Put something forward. What is it that you're going to put forward before you depart? You know, the Prophet ﷺ, he said in another narration, "Kun fi dunya ka'annaka gharib." Be in this world like you're a stranger or a traveller. And you know, such a profound statement. Why? Because look, you know when you travel, if you're travelling now from Newcastle to Manchester, or Newcastle to London, you might stop by Birmingham. When you stop in Birmingham, you might get some fuel, you might get some food, and you move on. Yes? In Birmingham, you know, if you're going to London, what are you going to do in Birmingham? You're not going to buy a house now, are you? You're not going to do that. You're just going to carry on. Stop for a short while, do what you need to do, and move. That's what the Prophet is saying, is this dunya, this time that we have here, and you do what you need to do, and you're going, you've got a destination. That destination is back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what is it that you're putting forward for that? And the reality of life, my dear brothers and sisters, is that it can come to an end at any moment. Yeah. Don't ever think that you have, 50 years ahead of you, or 30 years ahead of you, or you're going to change when you go to Hajj, and you're going to... No. I mean, there's no guarantees. I remember, subhanAllah, a few years ago, I went to perform a nikah. Yes, a nikah at a restaurant in Manchester. And I went into the restaurant, I was waiting at the entrance, and the brother came out and he said that, look, this was the brother of the bride. He said that the groom's father wants to say a few words and then you come in. Okay, then you start, inshallah. He just wants to welcome everybody. I said, no problem. So I was waiting, and I hear, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And then I hear people screaming, commotion. So I look inside, and the father of the groom had collapsed on stage. So everybody's rushing around, the paramedics come, 20 minutes they're on stage, then they take him away. Then 5 minutes later we get a phone call, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. The uncle passed away on stage at his son's nikah. I was thinking there's no way he woke up in the morning thinking this is my last day. He woke up in the morning thinking, what? This is going to be one of the happiest days of my life, my son's getting married, etc., etc. But it was written for him that was going to be his last day. That's the reality of life. You don't know what's around the corner. I remember when I was studying in Egypt, and there was an Egypt air flight that was coming from Paris, and they crashed, and everybody on board died. And I remember a few days later reading the story of a couple that was on that flight. And they said that this couple, the wife had been diagnosed with cancer. So they sold everything they had, borrowed money in order to travel to France for treatment. They travel to France, they have three young children, they live with their grandparents. They travel to France, they spend a month there, they get the treatment. By all accounts, the treatment's been successful. They're on this flight on their way back to Egypt. And the flight crashes and everybody on board dies. I remember reading that story thinking, that sister, that wife, she would have thought to herself that if I'm going to die, it's going to be because of the cancer. A million years she would have thought I'm going to die in a plane crash. But again, it teaches you what? That there's no guarantees in life. That's the nature of this dunya. You don't know when your moment's going to come. So the Prophet is saying, what? Utilize this dunya before you're taken away. Leave behind a legacy. Look at, and I'll end on this, I know I've already gone over, but Ali Banat. This story of Brother Ali Banat. Ali Banat, many of you may have read this story, was the famous brother from Australia. And he was being interviewed by Muhammad Ablas. And Muhammad Ablas says to him, explain to us your story. Now this is a young guy. He must have been in his 20s. And Allah blessed him with a lot of wealth. He had like a Ferrari or a Porsche or whatever it was in the driveway. He had watches, he had shoes, and Allah had given him a lot. And thousands of dollars for this and that. And so he says to him, explain to us your story. And Ali Banat, he says, Allah gifted me cancer. Allah gifted me cancer. He says, why do you call it a gift? He says, because I was living a life in which I was heedless of Allah. I wasn't living a life of ibadah, of worship. And Allah has given me this to wake me up. And now I've changed my life around. Yes, and I've started to dedicate my life to Allah. And then Muhammad Ablas asked him a question. He says, this Porsche and Ferrari and all of this wealth that you have, what value is it to you today? He says, honestly, to put a smile on the face of a child in Africa is dearer to me than all of these possessions now. And what did he do? He set up a charity. He dedicated the remaining years of his life for the sake of Allah, for serving humanity. And he left behind a legacy. It's not somebody who utilized his life now before it was taken away. So we shouldn't wait for any news for us to come that maybe you've got this long left or this might happen. No. Because you don't know if you're going to get that news or if suddenly you're going to go. So this is a reminder to myself that Allah has blessed us with this deen of Islam. He's blessed us with time. And sometimes when we think about leaving this world, we get scared and we get worried. But the fact that you're going to meet Allah, one of my teachers, he said to me, is there anything greater? You're going to meet your Creator. As long as you try your best to prepare for that, then alhamdulillah. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives us tawfiq. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He allows us to live lives which are purpose driven, which we really try to serve Allah, serve humanity, make use of this time. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that for those who are successful, we ask Allah that He blesses this community, He blesses the management, the trustees here, and all of those who are working hard for this organization. Jazakallah khair wa akhwa da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Jazakallah khair.
في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه يسبح له فيها بالغدو والآصال